What's up everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Emmeline Jade and I'm currently in between training phases right now. I just finished my first ever Ironman 70.3 and now I'm heading into marathon training for the Chicago World Major, which is coming up in October. I am technically in my marathon training phase, but it's kind of really on the lighter end and I'm just working on my top end speed to kind of get a little bit faster since I have a good base from 70.3 training. So I haven't really been vlogging much, so I thought I would take some time to do a little bit of a Q&A. I did post it back in my Insta stories to anyone who had any questions about my Ironman journey, running, wedding planning, and all that. So I do have all your questions here and I'm gonna go through them and hopefully they are somewhat helpful. And some of the categories that I've got here, obviously the big one is 70.3, how the race went, some follow-up questions there, 70.3 prep and training, as well as some gear, also just kind of training in general, and then obviously wedding stuff. So let's go into the nitty-gritty and start with my 70.3 prep and training gear. So the first question I have here is, how well could you swim and cycle before starting this journey? So in terms of all three disciplines, running is my strongest background. So that meant swimming and cycling was something that I needed to work on. When it comes to swimming, I actually used to swim competitively a long time ago, like I was a child. So this is about 2 decades ago. Funny enough, freestyle was not my specialty. I actually competed a lot in breaststroke. So when it came to brushing off my skills, not only did I have to remember how to swim again, but I had to learn how to do freestyle, which is not my strong suit. I did tell myself, you know, worst comes to worst, I'm gonna do breaststroke because that's what I could do. But, you know, all throughout training, I really practiced on my form when it came to front crawl or freestyle or whatever you call it. And it ended up being okay. But I did have some knowledge when it came to technique and whatnot, and it was really just a matter of brushing up those skills. So I didn't really have a hard time understanding, I guess, lingo and all the different terminology when it came to swimming. When it came to cycling, however, that's when it was like a foreign language to me. I knew nothing about road cycling. You know, when it came to my bike, I knew nothing about the mechanics of it, how to change a flat tire, and like FTP, watts, power, all that. I knew nothing. So I really started from scratch when it came to cycling. So that's my background. I would say I learned a lot from cycling, but I do know there is a lot more for me to learn when it comes to that sport. And then the next question I have here is, can you remind me what app you use for training? So there were a few apps that I used, but in terms of the actual like triathlon specific training, I was using the Motive app, and I'm not gonna lie, I really enjoyed it. This was the first time that I, you know, was training for something what I think was really big, and I didn't lean on a coach. And I think in terms of the workouts, this app was really helpful. I do want to preface that the nutrition advice on the app wasn't the best. It really did lean on calories, and you know, I'm still kind of new to triathlon training, but it didn't really give me, I wanted more specific guidance when it came to carbs and sodium, especially when it comes to very long races. You know, sodium intake and carb intake is really important. There was just a gut feeling that what I saw in the Motive app wasn't enough, so I did go elsewhere. I searched up my nutrition needs on a site called Precision Hydration. There's a Precision Fuel. I can't remember what it is, but I'll put it over here. Wetsuit gear recommendations. I can't really recommend any wetsuits because I've only had one. I do know that Zoot is a good brand, which is the brand that Kian wore. The one that I bought was from 2XU, and honestly, I found it really comfortable. Like, I did chafe a little bit in the neck, but I feel like that's kind of normal for a lot of people. Buoyancy was great. It did keep me fairly warm. I would pay attention. I don't know what the measurements are, but pay attention to the thickness of the wetsuits, because depending on the temperature of the water, you might need to find a wetsuit that is best suited for, you know, that particular temperature of water. But honestly, for what I was swimming in, which was, from I remember, 15 degrees Celsius, the wetsuit that I had was fairly decent and I wasn't that cold. But that being said, I don't get that cold very easily, especially when I'm exercising. I tend to actually run very hot. You know, take that with a grain of salt. If you are in Canada, I think it's Canada, or is it just Vancouver? I believe it's Canada. There's a site that I bought a lot of my gear from, and it's called Tri Boutique. So I'd recommend you check it out. There's quite a few sales and discounts on there. I tend to buy my stuff from there versus like the actual branded websites. Similar question is, did you try on different tri suits or how did you choose? So funny story. I decided to get a 2XU tri suit only because the shorts that I was practicing in was also 2XU, and it ended up actually being Kian's old tri shorts because I had no bike shorts, like padded shorts, and I'm like, I do not want to go out and buy it. And I think Kian outgrew his, so he was like, you know what, just use mine. And I was like, okay. I think at first it was supposed to be borrow, but it ended up being mine, and I found it really comfortable. I used those tri shorts on all my rides, and so I was like, you know what, if this is comfortable, surely the tri-suit is going to be just as comfortable. And it ended up being really good and it worked really well for me. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to stick to that brand. If it works well for me, great. I'm sorry if I'm not super helpful because I'm still new at this whole thing. I know there's other brands out there, but that's what worked really well for me. They are kind of pricey. I'm sure there are other tri-suits out there that are on the less expensive side of things, but I knew I wanted something that would give me enough padding but still be somewhat aero. And it worked really well for me. Anything you regret purchasing, or was there anything you think you should have bought but didn't? So honestly, looking back, I don't think I regret anything one bit. I'm trying to think. I really don't think there is anything that I regret buying. You know, if it had been super sunny, I probably would have regretted buying that rain jacket, but you know, that actually ended up being a lifesaver. Thank goodness I bought that last minute. I think what helped is like how I approached to buying things was kind of like on an as need basis. I wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna buy everything. I kind of started off with like, okay, what is at a minimum that I really need? Okay, a bike, a helmet, because I think the last thing I want is to just like buying things excessively, and I really wanted to save money because this sport is not cheap. So I was like, okay, during this time, I'm not gonna spend, you know, money on a tri-suit or wetsuit, even though I need it eventually. But I was like, okay, I'll wait until, you know, I've got enough money saved up. So I kind of just started there and then just built from there. Now we're moving on to the actual race. So this question asks, how was the swim? Was it better or worse than you thought? The swim overall was actually a lot better than I thought. If you've seen some of my previous vlogs, you know that swimming in open water was something that I was feeling so anxious about. There were a lot of days in those open water sessions when I was like, I'm not gonna get it. I'm just gonna have a panic attack. I'm just gonna float on my back. And I really had to focus on calming myself down that morning and just like, you know, focus on your breathing. It's focus on technique, one stroke at a time, and really just talking to myself positively rather than like thinking of the worst. And yeah, there were a few close calls, you know, swimming off course. There was some choppy water here and there, but eventually when I got into the rhythm, I enjoyed it. And honestly, it was the best part of the entire race. Is there anything that you would do differently? Yeah, I wish I should have stuck to my nutrition plan. If you saw in a previous video, I was like, I need to up my nutrition. I need to make sure that I've got enough salt, that I've got enough carbs on race day so that I can smash the run, because, you know, running is my bread and butter. I knew like if I went into that run with enough fuel, I would have such a great run, but no, that didn't happen. I don't know why I decided to just like up my intake and everything, and then yeah, I just ended up having GI issues. It could have gone differently, like if I had stuck to what my original plan was, you know, with my nutrition plan that had always been the case in all my training sessions. Maybe it wouldn't have been enough fuel, who knows? It's always going to be different considering the different factors like the weather, you know, how you feel that day, how much you ate the day before, etc. So it's always going to be trial and error, and the only way I'm going to find out is if I do it again. So a question related to this is, after the race, do you think you should have done more? Now I'm assuming this question is asking if I should have done more training, and I feel like with every race I'm always gonna think I should have done more. And this in particular, I do feel like I should have done more biking, but then at the same time, I feel like I've done all that I could, you know, especially coming from a background of zero biking experience. I think I did really well for, you know, what I've put forth in my training. I think that was definitely something that I prioritized, which was great. The run, I definitely, looking back, like if my goal was to do a sub 2, I think I could have done more speed workouts in my brick sessions. Like I think my brick sessions were mostly easy, but you know, I told myself I'm just gonna take it easy for the run, and then on race day I kind of switched that mindset and I was like, let's go aim for a sub 2. If not, let's aim for 2. There were mixed emotions when it came to the run. And then also too, I think looking back, I wish I had done more strength training. I think that just would have helped me in all aspects of the race. But again, this was my first one and I'm really happy with how I did it. Of course, there's always going to be room for improvement. So I think that is also another thing that I could have done more of. One of the most powerful advice for a newbie joining 70.3. I think when it comes to like all aspects of training for Ironman 70.3 or just like long distance endurance events, I would have to say is nutrition. That's definitely something that I've overlooked, not just in Ironman, but also in my marathon training. I think this actually opened my eyes to nutrition, and it made me realize that in my previous marathon training blocks I actually underfueled. But yeah, I think that's definitely something to focus on and to prioritize when it comes to training, in addition to obviously, you know, swim, bike, run. Ooh, I like this question. Did you end up preferring the marathon or 70.3 event training, etc.? So I think I mentioned this before, but when it came to training for 70.3 Ironman, I actually found it a lot harder when it came to the logistics of everything versus, you know, marathon training. You can just kind of get out the door and run around your neighborhood. You know, it's very accessible, whereas, you know, you got to drive to the pool, you got to get all the bike stuff like prepped and whatnot. Then there's the mechanics of it all, and having to rely on a bike is just so sometimes nerve-wracking. But in terms of like the event and the actual training of it, I actually prefer 70.3 just because I think just doing one thing over and over again just becomes so redundant, and it actually just, for me at least, leads to burnout. And sometimes the marathon can just go by so slowly, whereas 70.3, because it's a swim, you got to change through transition, and then the bike, then transition again, then the run. There's just so many different things, and I think the fact that there's so many different things just makes time go by so fast. I think I enjoy 70.3 a lot more than the marathon race itself. And I think also too, what I enjoy about racing 70.3 is like post recovery, both mentally and physically. It was a lot shorter than when it came to the marathon. Now, again, I can't speak to the full distance Ironman. This is only 70.3. So even though technically 70.3 is longer than the marathon, because the swim and bike is lower impact, it allowed me to recover a lot quicker post-race compared to, you know, the marathon. So in terms of training overall, do you have a good recommendation for a tri watch? I only have a Garmin watch, so I can't really speak to like Coros or Apple watches, but I do enjoy the Garmin watches. I've had it for years. Now, I've only had like the light version in terms of the systems. Like I had the Vivo Active. Before that, I had a Forerunner. Oh, I can't remember what it was, but it was the Forerunner like 45 or something like that. If you do plan on getting a Garmin, I do recommend getting one that does have the multi-sport function. That would be like the Garmin Fenix, which is what I now have, or I believe it's the Forerunner the Forerunner 955 series. Those are the two that I can recommend in terms of tri watches because of that multi-sport function. Ooh, I like this question. So how do you balance training with a partner? I find it really easy to balance training with my partner only because we have such similar lifestyles, if not the same lifestyle. So you know, when he's training, I'm training, and we try to match each other's schedules like that, so that way when I have free time, he has free time. So, you know, it's really all about communication. I know if you're in the corporate world or anything similar, communication is key, but honestly, it's true. I think that's what helps a lot. There's obviously been some hiccups here and there where we miscommunicate things and then our schedules are all off. If you have a partner who's not training, if he has his me time, then that's when you can have your me time, aka your training time, so that way it opens up some free time for both of you together. And of course, there are gonna be days where I'm just not feeling 100%, and those days when I'm not feeling 100%, Kian is so nice to, you know, do the rest of that 100% and just be there for me when I need it, and vice versa, you know. It's all about just really talking to each other in terms of like what you need, when you need it, etc. A lot of people are asking how wedding planning is going, and it is going. It will officially be 2 weeks once this video is up until the wedding day, and I just cannot believe it is finally here. I've actually been planning this for 2 years, and the reason why I did that was so that way I had time to have a life in all this planning. But yeah, it's been really good so far. I think the last month has been just so hectic because it's really now just putting everything together, chatting to all the vendors and all the small details. And I kid you not, right after the Ironman 70.3 race, all vendors were just emailing me saying like, we need to schedule a call, because I guess that was like the 1 month mark until the wedding day. And so all vendors were hitting us up being like, hey, we need to like chat about the details and all that. So it was kind of stressing me out. And also too, the day after the race, I also had my hair and makeup trial. Of course, there was really no like rest since the race, so much that I actually got sick towards the end, but save that for another time. I'm just like looking out that way because all the wedding stuff is laid out in our living room. And then last question, are you doing a wedding day run? 100% we are doing a wedding day run. If I'm training for Chicago, we are gonna fit in a wedding day run. I even told our wedding party that we're doing a wedding day run. We're not even doing a first look, we are running. And they're like, what? So I gave them a heads up. It'll probably be like a party pace run. But yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be a fun time. The wedding is gonna be the next big thing before Chicago Marathon. And then after that, we will go back to regular programming and start my new series, which is training for the Chicago Marathon. Thanks again for submitting all your questions. I hope you found my answers somewhat helpful. And if you have any other questions, comment down below. And with that, I'll see you in a later video. Bye.